They say you can tell a lot about a person by the way they speak when the room grows quiet. And on that late evening, when the office lights dimmed and the world outside felt still, Emily noticed something about Daniel's tone that made her heart pause for just a second. It had been a long week. The kind that drains your energy and scrambles your focus. Emily had stayed behind to finish the last batch of reports, hoping tomorrow would feel easier. Daniel, her coworker, usually left right after closing time. He was punctual, organized, the kind of person who always kept a tidy desk and a tidy life. Or so she assumed. But tonight, he lingered. Emily glanced over the top of her computer screen and saw him still typing, still focused, still there. She offered a small laugh. I thought you'd be out of here by now. He didn't look up immediately. But when he did, something about his expression felt softer than usual. I figured I'd stay until you were done, he said. His tone was calm, warm, almost gentle. And it surprised her more than she expected. Emily tried to brush it off. That's sweet, but you didn't have to. He shrugged lightly. Didn't feel right leaving you alone this late. His words settled in the air. Not heavy. Just sincere. Emily wasn't used to sincerity at work. Most conversations revolved around deadlines, numbers, and polite small talk. Nothing too personal. Nothing too real. But Daniel's voice carried something else tonight. Something truthful. Something careful. She wasn't sure how to respond, so she looked back at her screen and kept typing. I'll be done soon, she said quietly. A comfortable silence filled the room. Not awkward. Not forced. Just two people working under soft overhead lights, the city humming quietly outside the tall windows. Minutes passed. At one point, Daniel stood and walked over to the small kitchenette. Emily heard the sound of water running, then a kettle clicking on. He returned a moment later with 2 steaming cups. I made tea, he said. You looked like you needed it. She blinked, surprised again. Wow. Thank you. He smiled. Chamomile. The safe choice. Emily wrapped her hands around the warm mug, feeling a kind of comfort she hadn't expected to feel tonight. She took a sip. He sat a few feet away, facing her, one leg crossed over the other, his posture relaxed for once. You work too hard, he said softly. She let out a breathy laugh. Says the guy staying after hours with me. Fair, he replied, smiling. But still true. Emily hesitated before speaking again. You don't usually talk like this. He raised an eyebrow. Like what? Like you're noticing things. Daniel leaned back, thoughtful. Maybe I've just been paying attention longer than you realize. Her heart skipped. Just a little. Just enough for her to feel it. The office suddenly felt warmer. Quieter. More intimate than a workplace should feel after dark. She set her mug down. We barely talk outside of projects. That doesn't mean I don't see you, he said in that same gentle tone that had surprised her earlier. You're stronger than you think. Harder on yourself than you should be. Emily's breath caught, just slightly. It wasn't a big moment. Not dramatic. Not loud. But it stirred something inside her. Something she hadn't felt in a while. Why are you saying this now? She whispered. He looked at her with calm sincerity. Because tonight you seem tired. And sometimes people need to hear what's true. She swallowed carefully, unsure what to do with the emotion building in her chest. Before she could respond, a loud clap of thunder outside startled her. Rain began rushing down the windows, fast and sudden, like the sky had been waiting to break open. Daniel stood and walked closer to the glass, watching the storm. Then he looked back at her with quiet concern. You shouldn't walk home in this, he said softly. It's too heavy. She felt something shift. Something small. Something meaningful. I'll be fine, she said out of habit. But Daniel shook his head gently. Emily, you don't always have to be. She stared at him, unsure how this evening had become so unexpectedly tender. And then he added, in that warm tone that still surprised her. Please. Let me drive you. The storm outside roared. The lights flickered. Emily's heart beat just a little faster as she wondered what exactly this night was turning into. And she whispered to herself. Why does his voice sound different tonight? Why does it feel like he's saying more than the words themselves? The moment hung there, delicate and full of unspoken meaning. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Emily slowly stood from her chair, unsure what she would answer next. Or what this night might reveal. Emily hesitated as she reached for her coat. The rain outside hammered against the windows like a warning, or maybe a sign. She couldn't decide which. Daniel stood quietly near the doorway, waiting but not pushing. There was something respectful about the way he held himself, hands loosely in his pockets, posture relaxed, eyes gentle. Almost as if he didn't want her to feel pressured. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "But I want to." His voice carried the same warmth she'd heard earlier, a tone that felt new, different, almost protective. It made her heart flutter in a way she wasn't ready to admit. She gave him a small nod. "Okay. Thank you." They stepped out into the hallway together. The building was quiet, every office door dark, the echoes of their footsteps filling the empty space. It felt strange walking side by side like this after hours, no co-workers, no noise. Just the two of them. When they reached the lobby, the security guard gave a tired wave. "Storm's rough out there," he murmured. "You two be careful." Daniel thanked him. Emily simply smiled, still too wrapped in her thoughts to say much. Outside, the rain was relentless. Wind pushed against them as they hurried toward Daniel's car. He opened the passenger door for her, a small gesture that warmed her despite the cold air. Once inside, she exhaled slowly. The storm felt far away from the safety of the car's interior. Daniel slid into the driver's seat, shaking water from his hair, and started the engine. "Let's get you home," he said quietly. They drove through the city, the streets shiny with reflections, traffic lights glowing like soft lanterns in the downpour. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel broke the silence. "You know, I meant what I said earlier." Emily turned slightly toward him. "About what?" "About you not having to do everything alone." She looked out the window, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just used to it." "I figured," he said gently. "But that doesn't mean you deserve it." Her throat tightened. No one ever said things like that to her, at least not recently. People usually admired her independence, but they never questioned it. "Daniel," she said, "why do you care so much?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a slow breath before speaking. "Because I see you," he said. "Really see you. And I don't think you know how rare you are." Her eyes widened slightly. She searched his face, trying to understand his sincerity. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't being dramatic. He was simply telling the truth as he saw it. The warmth in his voice sent a quiet ache through her chest. Just then, the car stopped at a red light. The rain streaked down the windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up. Inside, though, the air felt still, almost intimate. Emily swallowed. "Daniel, we've worked together for years. You never talked like this before." "Maybe I didn't know how," he admitted softly. "Maybe I thought staying quiet was safer." "For who?" she asked. "For me," he said with a faint smile. "And maybe for you too." The light turned green. He drove on, but the unspoken weight of his words sat between them, gentle but unmistakably real. She leaned back in her seat, trying to calm her racing thoughts. "Why tonight?" she finally asked. "What changed?" He glanced at her, eyes sincere. "You did." Her breath caught. "Tonight you looked tired in a way that worried me," he said quietly. "And I realized. I couldn't stay silent anymore." She felt her chest warm, her eyes soften. His honesty tugged at something deep inside her, something she didn't realize she'd been missing. Before she could respond, the car slowed as they approached her street. Her building came into view, the porch light glowing faintly through the storm. Daniel pulled over gently, but he didn't unlock the doors right away. He just looked at her with a mixture of worry and warmth. "Do you want me to walk you in?" he asked softly. She opened her mouth to answer, but her voice felt stuck in her throat. Rain pounded on the roof. Thunder rolled in the distance. The moment stretched out, tender and uncertain. Emily finally whispered, I don't know. Daniel nodded. No pressure. Just say what you need. And for the first time that night, she felt something shift inside her, something she wasn't sure she could stop now. The question lingered in the air, delicate and full of meaning. Would she let him step into her quiet, carefully guarded world? Or would she keep the boundary that had been there for years? Her heart leaned toward one answer. But her voice hadn't caught up yet. The storm eased only slightly, but inside the car the air felt still, gentle, almost fragile. Emily stared at her building through the rain-dotted window, but her thoughts were nowhere near the front door. They hovered between her and Daniel, and the question she still hadn't answered. I don't want to push you, Daniel said quietly. His hands rested softly on the steering wheel, not tense, not impatient. Just waiting. Whatever you decide, it's okay. Emily finally turned toward him, her voice steady but soft. It's not that I don't want you to walk me in. I just don't want to read too much into things. Daniel's expression warmed, almost tender. Then let me make it simple. I'll walk you in because I care if you get home safely. Nothing more. Nothing you're not comfortable with. His tone, calm, sincere, unexpectedly gentle, made her chest tighten. She nodded slowly. Okay. I'd like that. He gave a small relieved smile and stepped out first, grabbing the umbrella from the back seat. Emily followed, and he met her by the passenger door, opening the umbrella over both of them. They walked toward her building, footsteps splashing through shallow puddles. The world around them was quiet except for the rain, the distant rumble of thunder, and the soft rhythm of her heartbeat. Emily adjusted her coat as they reached the steps. I'm sorry you had to deal with all this rain just because of me. Daniel shook his head gently. Emily, I stayed because I wanted to. Not out of obligation. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time she noticed the kindness in his eyes, steady, patient, present. On the small porch, sheltered from the rain, they paused. Just the two of them. Just the quiet moment stretching softly between them. Emily pulled out her keys. You've been different tonight, she said, almost a whisper. Daniel exhaled, a thoughtful breath. I know. I guess I stopped hiding how I feel. Her heart stumbled. About what? He hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. About you. Her breath caught. The sound of rain faded into the background. Her fingers stilled on the key in the lock. She searched his face, unsure if her heart was hearing correctly. Daniel, you've never said anything like that. He smiled faintly, a bit sad, a bit hopeful. Because I didn't think I should. Why not? She asked. Because you always looked like someone who didn't need anything from anyone. And I didn't want to complicate your life. She swallowed hard. Truth was, she had built her life to seem strong. Untouchable. Self-reliant. But hearing him say it out loud made her chest feel unexpectedly heavy. Maybe that was my mistake, she said quietly. Maybe I made it look like I didn't want anything more. Daniel tilted his head slightly, watching her with that same warm sincerity he'd carried all night. You're allowed to want things, he said gently. You don't have to pretend with me. Emily's gaze dropped to the ground for a moment, overwhelmed by the sudden vulnerability creeping in. I don't know what I want yet, she admitted. But I know this night feels different. Daniel nodded. That's enough for now. The porch light flickered softly above them. A moment passed. Slow, warm, careful. Finally, Emily placed her key in the lock but didn't turn it yet. Daniel, why tonight? She whispered. Why did everything change in just a few hours? He stepped back half an inch, not pulling away, just giving her room to breathe. Because tonight I saw you carrying too much on your own. And I realized I didn't want to stand on the sidelines anymore. Her heart ached at the honesty in his voice. He added quietly, but I'll move at your pace. Whatever that is. Emily felt a rush of gratitude. Not the loud kind. The quiet, steady kind that warms slowly and sinks deep. She finally opened her door. A soft golden light streamed out from the hallway behind her. She turned back to him. Thank you, for tonight. For everything. Daniel's smile was gentle, almost proud of her for saying it. Get some rest, he said. And Emily, if anything ever feels heavy again, You can call me. Even if it's late. She nodded, the warmth of his words settling softly in her chest. But just as she began to step inside, he paused and said, "Before I go, there's something I need to tell you. Something important." Emily's hand tightened on the doorknob. Her breath hitched. His expression shifted, still warm, but carrying something deeper. Something she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. Yet couldn't walk away from either. The night wasn't over. And neither was the truth he was about to share. For a moment, the porch felt impossibly still. The rain softened into a steady whisper behind them, and Emily stood frozen in her doorway, heart thudding softly in her chest. Daniel took a slow breath, as if choosing his next words with care. "I didn't want to say this while we were still at the office," he said. "It felt complicated there. But I should have told you sooner." Emily stepped back out onto the porch, letting the door ease shut behind her. Her voice was gentle. "Tell me what?" Daniel's eyes held a tenderness that made her breath catch. "I'm leaving the company," he said quietly. The air shifted. Emily's heart stumbled. "You're what?" He nodded. "In a few weeks. I've been offered a position at a firm across town. Better hours. A chance to grow. I've been thinking about it for months." The words hit her harder than she expected. She swallowed, trying to steady her voice. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because it didn't feel real until recently," he said. "And because, every time I thought about telling you, something stopped me." Her brow furrowed. "What stopped you?" "You," he admitted softly. "I didn't want to think about leaving when I wasn't ready to let go of what I felt." Emily stepped back a half inch, not out of fear, but out of the sheer weight of the moment. "You mean, how you feel about me?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." Her mind spun. All the little moments at work, the careful kindness, the quiet glances, suddenly they all connected. "And you waited until tonight," she whispered. "I didn't mean to," he said. "But when I saw you struggling, when it was just the two of us in that quiet office, I realized I couldn't pretend anymore." Emily pressed a hand to her chest, trying to breathe through the swirl of emotions. "Daniel, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he said gently. "I just needed you to know the truth before things changed." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the sincerity in every line of his face. He wasn't asking for anything. He wasn't expecting anything. He just wanted honesty. Rain dripped from the porch roof in slow, rhythmic taps. The world felt calm and heavy all at once. "How long have you felt this way?" she whispered. Daniel lowered his gaze before answering. "Longer than I should have kept quiet about it." Emily exhaled shakily. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was the kind of confession that rearranged the air around them. She leaned against the doorframe, overwhelmed by the truth she hadn't seen coming. "And what happens now?" she asked softly. He stepped closer, but not too close. Just enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. "Now," he said, "you take all the time you need. I don't want you to rush anything. I don't want my feelings to complicate your life." "But they do," she whispered. "I know," he said. "But only because I care. And because I want to do this the right way." Emily's chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like this, calm, respectful, honest, patient. It made something inside her tremble softly. She lifted her eyes to his. "What about you?" she asked. "What do you need?" He smiled gently. "Just clarity. Even if it comes slowly." Emily opened the door again, letting the warm hallway light spill out around her. She didn't step in. "Not yet. Would you come inside for a moment?" she asked quietly. "Just to talk. Nothing more." Daniel's eyes softened. "Only if you're sure." "I am," she said, surprising even herself with the steadiness of her voice. "I don't want this conversation to end out here." He nodded once, a slow, thoughtful motion, and stepped toward her. But just as he reached the doorway, a flash of lightning lit up the sky. And something inside Emily shifted sharply. A sudden fear. Not of him. Not of the storm. But of what stepping forward might mean. Of the feelings rising faster than she could name them. Of the change already unfolding. She pulled in a sharp breath. Daniel, wait. He paused instantly. Concern filled his eyes. What's wrong? Emily's voice trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of a truth she hadn't expected to face tonight. I don't know if I'm ready to let someone in again, she whispered. Not yet. Not tonight. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He simply nodded, eyes warm, understanding. It's okay, he said softly. I'm not going anywhere. But he was leaving the company. And that reality suddenly stung in a way she hadn't prepared for. Emily swallowed hard. Can we talk more tomorrow? She asked. Daniel's voice was steady. Of course. She finally stepped inside, her heart full, her mind spinning with too many emotions to sort at once. And just as she began to close the door, Daniel said gently, I'm glad I told you. No matter what happens next. The door clicked shut softly, leaving her alone in the hallway. But far from untouched. Emily leaned against the inside of the door, eyes closed, trying to steady her breath. Tomorrow suddenly felt heavier than anything the storm could bring. Emily barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still hear Daniel's voice, soft, steady, honest in a way she hadn't expected. His confession replayed again and again, weaving into the rhythm of the rain outside her window. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the streets washed clean and the air cool. But Emily's thoughts were anything but clear. She moved through her routine slowly, carefully, as if her mind was still catching up to the emotions she had tried so hard to ignore. By the time she reached the office, her heart was already racing. When she stepped inside, she saw Daniel at his desk. He looked calm, focused, as if nothing about last night had shaken him. But when he glanced up and their eyes met, she saw it. A quiet hope, tucked gently beneath his steady gaze. Good morning, he said softly. Emily managed a small smile. Morning. The office was still empty, most employees wouldn't arrive for another half hour. The stillness gave her courage she wasn't sure she had. Can we talk? She asked. Daniel nodded immediately. Of course. They walked to a small meeting room with glass walls, but the blinds were closed, offering a little pocket of privacy. Emily took a seat, her hands folded in her lap, her breath slow and intentional. I thought about everything you said last night, she began. And I need you to know something before anything else. Daniel listened intently, quiet and patient. I was scared, she admitted. Not because of you. Because I haven't let myself feel anything real for someone in a long time. He nodded gently. I understand. I'm not used to someone noticing me the way you do, she said, her voice trembling just slightly. I didn't realize how much I was carrying alone until you pointed it out. Daniel leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on his knees. You don't have to explain anything you're not ready to. But I want to, Emily whispered. Because you were honest with me. And you deserve the same. She drew a slow breath. When you said you're leaving, something inside me hurt. More than I expected. And that told me something I was afraid to admit. Daniel's eyes softened. What did it tell you? That I don't want you to walk out of my life just as I'm finally noticing what's right in front of me. A long, gentle silence filled the room. Daniel exhaled, not in surprise, but in quiet relief. Emily, he said softly, you don't have to rush anything. I'm here. Even if things move slowly. I know, she said. And that's why I'm not afraid of this. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I don't know what the future looks like. But I want to try. I want to see where this could go, with you. Daniel's expression shifted into something warm, hopeful, steady. I'd like that too, he said. Emily felt her chest loosen, the weight of uncertainty easing little by little. But, she added gently, I also want you to take that new job. You deserve it. Daniel looked surprised. You're sure? Yes, she said firmly. I don't want you to stay here because of me. I want you to grow. And if something real is starting between us, it won't break just because your office is a few miles away. A slow smile spread across his face. You amaze me, he said softly. Emily laughed under her breath, feeling warmth rise in her cheeks. Please don't say things like that this early in the morning. Why? He asked with a light grin. Because it's already a lot to process, she said, trying and failing to hide her smile. Daniel reached out, hesitating just long enough to make sure she was comfortable, then gently placed his hand over hers. No rush. No pressure. Just a quiet, meaningful touch. Emily didn't pull away. Whatever pace you choose, Daniel said softly, I'll follow it. Emily squeezed his hand gently. And whatever path you walk, she said, I'll cheer for you. Even if I'm not always beside you physically, I'll still be here. Daniel's eyes warmed, gratitude softening his voice. That means more than you know. A knock sounded on the meeting room door, co-workers beginning to arrive, the office waking up. But for a moment, the world inside the small room felt still, safe, and changing in a quiet, beautiful way. Emily stood, Daniel following. Before they stepped out into the hall, she turned to him. One more thing, she said. Yes. She smiled gently. I'm glad you stayed late last night. Daniel smiled back, that warm, subtle smile she now recognized as his truest one. So am I, he said. They walked out together, not as co-workers carrying unspoken feelings, but as two people beginning something new, slow, honest, and full of promise. The future wasn't certain. But for once, Emily didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. The end.